Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Kenichi. I'm very excited today because we have some great guests. They're going to tell us about a great project they've been doing for a very long time. Today we are going to talk about Alzheimer's disease. Are we close to prevention or cure? Every week there is new information about this disease on the internet. I have two representatives from the Yale University School of Medicine Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. They are Vanessa Clayton. Vanessa, thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate it. She's the Community Engagement Research Associate. And of course, we have Dianne Davis, the Outreach and Recruitment Coordinator, to talk about it. At the conclusion of this program, there will be a phone number and an email address to access their department. I want to thank you both for coming on, though, today. It's really exciting because this is a real important cause. This is something that has affected millions of people for centuries. So I'm really happy that you're both here to go over all this with us. So thank you again.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Thank you. We will also have some new and exciting projects being done by other organizations. But let's start at the beginning. So Vanessa, what is the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia?
Well, Alzheimer's is just one form of dementia. In fact, the most common type. And dementia is a syndrome where brain cells, your neurons, are negatively affected or impacted and therefore interfere with your normal functioning, your normal brain functioning, memory, thinking, behavior, and habits. The other types of dementia are frontotemporal dementia, where the impacts are in those certain sections of the brain. There's Lewy body dementia, where clumps of protein, and we'll talk about the protein in a minute, form in certain spots on the brain, blocking the cells from communicating with each other. And then there's vascular dementia, where blood clots form.
Yeah, and let me ask you, what causes this to happen? I mean, it's amazing to me that somebody could be going about their everyday life and then out of nowhere, starting to forget things and things like that. Do we know what causes it?
Well, there are many causes, and they're still being researched, and it could be creeping up on you for about 20 years before it hits. That's why when you said it hits all of a sudden, it's been developing over the years. But it has been proven that a protein called amyloid, which is normally found in the brain, starts to multiply and deposits on cells, and therefore it blocks those cells from being able to communicate with each other, so they interfere with the person's normal functioning.
Right.
And then there's also what's called tau tangles.
Yeah.
The tau is an essential part of the brain, but if they get tangled up, they cause that blockage.
Yeah. I mean, it really is, something that I know for years and years people have done a lot of research trying to find what causes this, how they could prevent it, things like that. And it's something that I think is really great what both of you are doing, because it cannot be taken lightly. Really, you want to see this hopefully someday come to an end.
Oh, yes.
What would you say, who are most affected by this disease? Because one thing I think, Vanessa and Dianne, same thing, is it used to always be, they would say, in older people, but I've seen quite a few younger people get affected by this horrible disease. So just what is really the ones that are affected the most?
Well, 1 in 9 of the people with Alzheimer's are age 65 or older. 73% are over age 75. So that's 25% of people still younger. And there is early onset Alzheimer's that can strike at any age, in your 30s and 40s. Black Americans are twice as likely to be affected by Alzheimer's than whites, and Hispanics are 1.5 times more likely. Women are 2/3 of the Alzheimer's patients. So we're just not sure why that happens. It's just a combination of factors: environment, health issues, etc.
Right.
Yes.
And how can a doctor, when he's examining somebody, or he or she is examining somebody, How can they determine that you might have early Alzheimer's or even early dementia?
If someone is concerned that their memory is slipping more than just normal aging, and they may, talk to their doctor, your primary care physician is always your first line of communication. But they may refer you to a neuroscientist of some kind, a neurophysician, that will do a blood test, because the primary care physicians aren't trained necessarily to study the blood to the extent where they can determine if there is amyloid or tau in the brain. So the blood test is one of the first biomarkers, the first test of whether there's something happening up there.
Right. And as you both know, people take medications for different things. I mean, some take it for blood pressure, diabetes, whatever it might be. Do the medications or even like the anesthesia, does that affect the observation, your observation? I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, a complete medical history is taken and your medication list before you're put into any study or any treatment. That's a very complicated issue that a team of clinicians usually look at the medical history and the medications to determine if they might interfere with whatever treatment plans are prescribed.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Vanessa, a blood test could kind of help. It could be helpful. It's a, your research tool, or it's something being used by primary care physicians. Is that possible?
Not primary care physicians, because they're not trained to look for the specifics. That's why they refer you to a neuroscientist, a neurosurgeon, a neuro physician, or a geriatrician that is trained to look and find. And they're fine-tuning the blood tests more and more to get as much information as they can.
Right. And folks, I think the biggest thing is, as I just spoke to Vanessa, is we really don't know what is causing this. We don't really understand. We know it's a horrible disease, but we don't really know all the basis to it. So at this time, Dianne is going to give us a PowerPoint presentation as to the warning signs and the difference between normal aging, decline, and dementia. Also, what we can do to prevent or slow down Alzheimer's. So Dianne, the floor is yours, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you. So as we age, there's a kind of continuum of changes in the brain. So normal aging, actually, even though age is the biggest risk factor for dementia like Alzheimer's, we don't expect that there is a significant decline in people's ability to think clearly and do their daily activities unless there is some kind of pathological process going on. So for instance, normal aging would be you see somebody you haven't seen for a while and their name doesn't come to you right away, or there's a word on the tip of your tongue and you don't quite get it, but then it comes to you later. Or you come out of the parking lot and from the grocery store and you're not quite sure where your car is, but that's what the clicker on the key fob is for. But usually people, though they might be a little slower to learn new things or have a little bit more difficulty integrating something new like a new medication into their usual regime, they should function well into their 80s and 90s. At the other end is dementia that Vanessa talked about, but in the middle is a condition called mild cognitive impairment. And there's been an increasing focus on mild cognitive impairment in recent years, and it's got really two parts. One is that there is some impairment, usually in short-term memory loss, that either the person or those around them might notice, or if they go to their primary physician and complain about memory loss, they might be given a cognitive test. And either if they've had one before, there's a decline, or if they've never had one before, the physician might say, well, based on your education and your professional accomplishments, you really should be scoring better on this test than you are. And then they're often referred on to neurologists. But significantly, the person with mild cognitive impairment is still functioning fine. They're able to do everything that they ever did, manage their own bills, drive safely, manage their medications, all the more complicated things that we do. So the mild cognitive impairment, there's two ways to think about people in this category. One is that mild cognitive impairment increases the risk of developing a dementia like Alzheimer's. We know that over the next 3 years, about half of the people that get this diagnosis progress enough that they get a dementia diagnosis. But probably this is actually the earliest stage of Alzheimer's disease. As Vanessa mentioned, Alzheimer's disease does not come on suddenly. It happens over 10 to 20 years before there's enough brain impairment that people get a dementia diagnosis. And now that we have the blood test to check for amyloid and tau and the amyloid PET scan, which is another research tool, if somebody has mild cognitive impairment and has one of those positive biomarkers or amyloid tests, then we can say with some degree of certainty that they actually already have Alzheimer's disease, even though they don't yet have a dementia. So that's been a huge boon in recent years, because you used to not be able to tell if somebody had Alzheimer's until after they were dead when you did a brain biopsy. Now we can diagnose people very early. And the significance of that I'll talk about later. And then there's finally dementia. So as Vanessa said, dementia is the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is the leading cause. So you have to have some loss of your intellectual or cognitive functioning. Typically starts with short-term memory, but then also includes language, the ability to plan and organize, your orientation to time and space, behavior and mood or personality changes, and significantly, it has to be serious enough to interfere with your daily functioning. Either you're functioning at work or at home or in your leisure activities. So you have to have a decline from your previous level of functioning to get a diagnosis of dementia. As you mentioned, there are people, those of us who are retired are already slowed down a bit, but people under 65 who are still working, the first sign that there's something wrong might be that a new boss comes in and has different expectations of how you should do your job, or they introduce a new computer system and the person just can't adjust to that change and they retire. So the 10 warning signs of dementia relate to those different areas of brain functioning, and I'm going to talk a little about each of them. So one is memory loss that's severe enough to interfere with your day-to-day life. So this isn't just, you made an appointment with your physician for 6 months in advance and you didn't write it in your calendar, so you might forget it. Well, that's why your physician or your dentist makes a phone call or sends you a text to say, guess what, you've got this appointment coming up that you made. This is a person who becomes increasingly repetitive. They'll repeat themselves within the same conversation, or they'll call you repeatedly, not able to remember that you've spoken or what the conclusion of the conversation was or plans that you made. So this starts to become pretty obvious, particularly to people around you. The second is challenges in planning or solving problems. All of us function better in the context of our habits and routines when we really don't have to think things through. But if something new comes into play, that's where the person developing a dementia begins to have difficulties. So that, for instance, if you're going on vacation to a place with a different climate, being able to know what to pack that would be appropriate there. This is what we call executive functioning. It's the front part of the brain that controls this and lets you figure out how to deal with new situations. The third is difficulty even completing familiar tasks, either tasks at home or at work or leisure, so that, for instance, being able to cook a particular recipe that you've cooked most of your life without actually consulting the recipe, or being able to get all the components of the meal on the table at the same time, or, as I said, adjusting to a new environment at work, or leisure activities. If you can't remember the plot of a novel or the characters from one chapter to the next, it's not any fun anymore. Or remembering a card game or a board game, the rules of that you would have always play, or following your sports team, if you can't do that anymore. The fourth is a confusion with time or place. So the time confusion, again, those of us who are retired, we don't know necessarily the exact date, but we know it's November, we've moved into fall, it's 2025. The person with dementia loses that. So they could look out at the snow and not be able to tell you it was winter. Or they may have difficulty with things that aren't happening right now, so that how long ago something happened or how far in the future something is. So you might tell them, your niece is getting married next spring, and then even assuming they can remember that you told them, they might ask repeatedly whether that's happened, because this kind of interacts with memory because, if people are talking about something, you're not quite sure whether they're talking about something that's happening right now or something that happened in the past where their memories are still more vivid. The place confusion is the person might suddenly look around in their home and nothing looks familiar to them, so they want to go home. And they're often thinking about a home where they lived when they were young, or when they were, where they grew up, or when they were first married, or they may be driving in what should be a familiar area, and suddenly they'll get lost because nothing looks familiar, or particularly if there's a detour, they might not be able to get back to where they were. People are going to have trouble with visual images and spatial relationships, so that knowing that a stop sign means stop, for instance. I mean, you can begin to see how driving is one of the complicated things that starts to be affected. Or spatial relationships, they're walking along on a level surface, but it changes from a carpet to a hardwood floor, and they might see that as a level change, and that makes them at risk to fall. The 6 is difficulty with language, either in speaking or writing. So again, this isn't just the words on your tip of your tongue and it comes later. This is actually losing the words, so that they may know that a watch is to tell time, but not be able to name it as a watch, or they might use a wrong word, or even a word that isn't a word. Their language becomes much more vague. They start to use these kind of he and she pronouns, and you're not even sure who they're talking about. Or if you ask them, well, who brought you to the clinic today? They might say my mother or my sister, when in fact it was a daughter. And sometimes you're not sure, are they just using the wrong female noun, or do they really not know who they're with? And the language just gets more vague. So even if you can understand what they're saying, you can't necessarily figure out the context of that. The 7th is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace your steps. Now, I'm always losing my credit card and my keys, which is why there should be a place for everything and everything in its place. But I can think, okay, where was I the last time I used that object? And then I can figure out which store I left the credit card at, because that was the last place I was. Or I can figure out, okay, what was I wearing when I used that credit card? And then I can go up into the laundry and pull it out of the pocket of yesterday's jeans. The person with dementia loses the ability to do that tracking and kind of work backwards. And they may anyway have put things in very odd places, the car keys in the freezer, and not be able to find them. The 8th is decreased or poor judgment. This is, again, a front part of the brain function. And you'll see this in 2 kind of different ways. One is that people have more difficulty with their financial management. So they may be on a fixed income, and they start to give away money that they really can't afford to. They are going to be incredibly prone to falling victim to scams. The scammer and the scammers are very clever. Will call and say, well, you've won $1 million in the lottery, but you have to send me 1,000 before I can release this money to you. Or your grandson is in Mexico and needs money. And older people aren't very sophisticated about how much a stranger can glean from social media about somebody. And so they may believe this, and they send off the money order. But even charities that they would like to give to, I mean, we all get so much junk mail, and to an older person, what is a solicitation may look like a bill. And so they pay, and even though it may be just small amounts, it adds up over time. Or even charities they'd like to support, they may not remember that they've already given this month and last month. But the other part of the poor judgment is knowing what's socially appropriate. So that I might see somebody I haven't seen for a while and think to myself, they've gained a little weight. The person with dementia will say to them, well, you're getting fat, not realizing that this is, hurtful and not appropriate. Or they might, touch small children in the grocery store when parents really don't appreciate that. Or they might start paying less attention to their personal grooming and hygiene. The 9th is that people will withdraw from work or social activities. If you're having trouble with your language, if you're having trouble with your memory, it's not fun anymore to be in a large social setting. And so people withdraw increasingly into whatever is a comfort zone for them. And finally, changes in mood or behavior or personality. This isn't an inevitable part of dementia, and some people go into their dementia with their same sweet personality. But often people, if they realize that they're slipping, will be anxious or depressed. They may be suspicious. I mean, we were talking about losing things. If you've lost something and you or can't find something, then of course, what do you think? Somebody must have taken it, and the somebody may be the vague he or she or they, or it may be a specific person, even though that specific person hasn't been in the house. But families, when confronted with this, will think, well, there's a homemaker in the house. Maybe they really did take something. But then it's often very odd things like they took my underwear or they took my Tupperware that nobody is really going to steal. Or if the thing is found, then, well, they brought it back. Well, no thief returns items to the home. So that suspiciousness, or what we call paranoia, or they may even see or hear things that aren't there, visual or auditory hallucinations. And their personality may become more self-centered, more irritable, so that, again, this part is not inevitable, but it's common. So why would we want to diagnose dementia early? Well, a number of reasons. One is that the changes in personality or cognition that people are seeing may not be related to dementia. It might be that somebody had a little stroke, or it might be that they've got undiagnosed diabetes and are running high blood sugars, or undiagnosed thyroid disease, or that there are medications that are causing confusion and aren't agreeing with them anymore, even though they could tolerate those when they were a younger person, particularly like over-the-counter sleep meds, which all contain Benadryl, are often not very well tolerated by older people. So you want to get those diagnosed so that the kind of initial workup for dementia is often ruling out and treating all those other things. Or depression. You treat depression, people may get better, or you treat poor sleep. Also, the treatments that we have for dementia, both the ones that we've had historically and these newer ones, work better at the very earliest stages of the disease. So if you've already got a lot of damage in your brain, it's probably too late. But if it's just beginning to have these amyloid and tau changes, then the treatments will work better. Also, while you've only got mild cognitive impairment or early dementia, you're assumed to still be competent to make your own decisions. So this is the time to get your legal and financial affairs in order. So you want to make sure that you have a will that says what you want to happen to your stuff after you die. You want to make sure you have a living will that says how aggressive you would want your care to be if you were at the end of your life. You want to name a healthcare agent to carry out your wishes or make those decisions for you. And you want a power of attorney for finances, excuse me, so that somebody else can pay your bills. And finally, and we would think one of the important things is that while you're early in the course of your illness, you can still participate in clinical trials.
Right.
Because most of the drug trials are looking for people with mild cognitive impairment or very early dementia.
Let me ask you this. One of the things I always thought about is, are there certain supplements that can help, like over-the-counter ones, stuff that might not prevent this, but at least help you tolerate it better?
Well, here's the problem with supplements. Supplements are a multi-million-dollar business, the Prevagen, the Serafolin, all those. But you'll notice in the commercials that it's almost always just testimonials from people who presumably have taken these drugs. And they might say clinically proven or neurologist recommended. But in fact, there's always this disclaimer that says, not meant for diagnosis, treatment, prevention, or cure of any disease.
Yeah.
So, and the FDA has no control over supplements like those, or cinnamon or turmeric or the other things that people might use. So you don't know whether they're safe, whether they're pure, whether they are as potent as they say they are. So I would say to people, don't waste your money. I do want to talk about the things that we can do to prevent Alzheimer's disease. One of the most exciting things that has come out of research in recent years is that about 40% of the dementias are related to behaviors that we can change, so we can do something about. And it's never too early to start, it's never too late to start. And the more of these behaviors that you can incorporate into your life, the better off you're going to be. So that there's, for instance, study done a number of years ago in Finland first shown this, and now it's been replicated in 72 countries, including the US, where the US Pointer study showed that if you have a program that combines heart health, healthy diet, exercise, social and cognitive engagement, you can significantly reduce or delay the onset of dementia. So it's obviously easier to take a pill than it is to change your behavior, but let me give you some pointers. So anything you do for your heart, you do for your brain. So that the risk factors for cardiovascular and like heart disease and stroke have a great deal of overlap with Alzheimer's disease. So it's obesity, diabetes, and hypertension. So if you control those things, get a healthy weight, get your blood pressure down, control your diabetes, you're off to a great start. You obviously want to stop smoking, or never start, preferably, as that's a risk for cognitive decline. Exercise is a very important part of this. What we're talking about is maybe 30 minutes 4 times a week of something that gets your heart rate up. So a brisk walk, swimming, dancing, whatever, and also kind of stretching and strengthening exercises that keep your mobility up. Eating right. So there is a particular diet that has been involved with these research studies, and this is typically known as the Mediterranean diet. It's now called the MIND diet. So this is high in leafy green vegetables like spinach and collard greens and kale, and other vegetables, nuts, berries, particularly blueberries and strawberries, whole grain, fish, particularly salmon, which has a lot of omega-3, poultry, beans, olive oil. And you want to limit the amount of red meat that you eat, the butter and margarine, the full-fat dairy, the fried or fatty fast foods or ultra-processed food, which increases inflammation, which is also part of this process, pastries and sweets, sugary drinks, sodas, sweet tea, that kind of thing, and alcohol only in moderation. So that's what your body needs. And back to supplements, though they may include omega-3s and those kind of things, there's no evidence that taken by themselves as opposed to in combination with the other nutrients in food, they work as well. So you really want to use the money that you might have spent on supplements to buy yourself a healthier diet.
Yeah.
Brain injury can increase the risk of dementia, so always using a helmet if you're riding a bike or playing a contact sport, using a seatbelt in the car. And we need to train our kids to do this from early on. I mean, we know football players develop a dementia because of all the concussions they have. Yeah. People who fall and hit their heads, are more at risk. So anything you can do to make your house safer to prevent falls. Getting good sleep. People who have a condition called sleep apnea, which is when you actually stop breathing at night, that's a treatable condition that'll help. But all of us as we age don't sleep as well as we used to. So you need to have good sleep hygiene. You go to bed pretty much at the same time, get up at the same time, don't drink a lot of fluids after supper so that you're not getting up to go to the bathroom all night, and not napping a lot during the day. Taking care of your mental health. There's some indication that depression in midlife can lead to cognitive changes in late life. Staying socially engaged. So this might be with your church or synagogue or mosque, or with a civic group, or in a volunteer organization, or just with family and friends, but keeping that connection. that was the worst part of COVID in my mind, was that people got so isolated, and people with dementia who were stuck at home and never saw anybody had a more rapid progression, or in nursing homes where nobody could visit anymore. Continuing to challenge your mind, so learning a new language, or building a piece of furniture, or playing games of strategy like bridge, things that get you thinking. And finally, formal education when you're younger decreases the risk of dementia, though obviously people with PhDs develop Alzheimer's disease as well, but you got to do the things that you can do.
So I think, one of the things you touched on that I wanted to ask you, you brought up football, and I thought it was a great point. I mean, you're seeing young kids now start playing when they're in 3rd, 4th grade. I mean,
Bad idea.
Do you think, to me, this is just my opinion, I wouldn't even, if my son wanted to play, I would probably not allow it till at least 8th grade. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the young brain is very susceptible to injury, which is why bike helmets from toddlerhood on, when people start getting on bikes, you got to protect that brain. And I think very young tackle football is a bad idea.
Yeah, I would agree as well.
But even soccer, I mean, they're hitting the ball with their head,
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned about not having sweet tea and things like that. But let me ask you, green or black tea, is that something, and even orange juice, are those some of the drinks that you might encourage people to try to drink more of that might help prevent?
Actually, coffee is apparently good for your memory.
Yeah,
So, I think, things that aren't sweet or ultra processed. I'm not sure that artificially sweetened drinks are all that much better either, because that's other chemicals. But you want to have a diet that's as natural as possible.
Right. And Vanessa, let me ask you, and I know I'm going to botch this word, and I apologize, but what about, is it called Lecanemab or?
Lecanemab.
And
Donanemab.
Talk about those. What are those exactly? And
those are 2 drugs that have been studied for years. Our Yale research team has been part of the study, but there's been a national and an international study. And those 2 drugs have been approved by the FDA now and are being used. They have been found to slow the progression of Alzheimer's in people who are just getting it with mild dementia.
Right.
Slowing that progression. And so the studies continue to be underway.
But unfortunately, those are infusion drugs as well.
Yes.
So they are expensive, even though presumably Medicare is now paying some for them because they're FDA approved, and they're also not easy to do. You have to go in once a month to a center to get an IV and those kinds of things. So I don't know that they're widely used yet.
Not yet. Right. But there are several other drugs that are currently in development to attack the tau in your brain. And different drugs are being tested all the time. But those 2 are in use now, but again, very expensive.
Right. And I know the internet mentions that we could receive up to $50 every time we come and participate, but how could we sign up for these studies? I mean, how would people be able to sign up for the research studies at Yale?
Okay, at the end of this presentation, you will get my information, and also you could just go on our website, alzheimers.yale.edu, and someone will call you. You would leave your information. They'll call you and set up an appointment. Or if you call me directly, I will take your medical information. I do an intake. That's called an intake.
Very good. Yeah.
Yes, collecting general information as well as your medical history, your medications that you're taking. I refer that to the doctor, the principal investigators, and they look at it. They'll give you a call and clarify some information and determine what study, if any, you might be qualified for, if it's available currently, or if your medical history will prohibit you from participating.
Right. And let me ask you, can you kind of touch on how we could leave a brain tissue donation for the Yale program, and how will that not interfere with an open casket?
The brain donation program is very important. You get to do that autopsy at the end, and it gives you much more information about your particular disease. At the point of death, the family member would contact our office, and the funeral home will transport you to Yale New Haven Hospital, to the pathologist, who just a small incision in the back of the head can remove that brain. That will not interfere with an open casket or even delay it. It takes about a half an hour. Funeral home waits there till it's done, brings the body back, and the family can continue to make plans. But it's a very important part of the research.
Right. And Dianne, when you were touching on this and you were doing the PowerPoint, I thought about this because I think it happens to myself and other people as well. And it is the short-term memory sometimes. And it made me think a lot because there'll be times when I'll put my wallet down, or I'll get ready to want to go research something, like say I want to look at something on like CNN or MSNBC, and then 10 seconds later I'm forgetting, like, okay, what was I just going to look at? I mean, is that something you should take serious, or is it just, you don't want to overreact, but at the same time, that does happen to a lot of us.
No, it happens to a lot of us, and partly it's, are we paying enough attention? You can't remember something that you weren't concentrating on to begin with. So if somebody's talking to you and your mind is somewhere else, you're not going to remember what they said to you. So those kinds of minor things that don't really interfere with your day-to-day functioning, I think that's just life. Or if you got too much going on, I mean, one of the reasons why I think it's so important while you're well to develop good habits, that you have a calendar where all your appointments are, that you, if you're taking more than one medication, you pre-pour it into a pill box, so that if it's 10 o'clock and you think, did I take my morning meds, you can look, well, it's Wednesday, they're still there, I guess I forgot. So those kinds of strategies, a place for everything and everything is placed, those kinds of strategies that help us function, help all of us. But if you've got a lot of stress in your life and a lot of things going on, things are going to be missed. I mean, I don't even have a lot of stress in my life, and I was supposed to be on a Zoom with Vanessa on Monday afternoon, and in the morning I looked at my calendar, I said, oh yes, Zoom at 4:30, and then I got busy with something else and I missed the Zoom at 4:30. So, and I don't think I'm developing a dementia, so it happens to all of us.
Right, okay. The National Institute of Health and Harvard Medical School suggests that a lithium deficiency could be the cause of Alzheimer's. Can it be dangerous taken without doctor's orders? Is it the same lithium taken by someone who has a manic depression deficiency?
So this is actually a very exciting new study. This is a study that's done in mice, however. They have mouse models for Alzheimer's disease. And the kind of lithium that they use is not the kind that is used for bipolar illness. It's a different kind of lithium that can be used in ultimately in quantities that are much safer. So this is an exciting new thought that maybe lithium deficiency in the brain is one of the earliest indicators or causes of Alzheimer's, but we're a ways from moving from a mouse model to human trials of this. And certainly people should not be. Lithium can be a dangerous drug. Even for manic depressives, the amount of lithium that you take to control symptoms is not very far from the amount of lithium that's toxic. So nobody should be taking lithium thinking that. But if this should come to fruition, what a lovely thing. Lithium is cheap. You can put it in the water like fluoride.
And there are some ongoing research in other institutions. Of course, the University of New Mexico, there's vaccines from the Thera Vaccine Biologics of Canada to rid us of tau tangles and amyloid plaques. Human trials are, supposed to start in 2026. But can vaccines affect the brain at all? Is that something that we should worry about? Because listen, for myself, I get a B12 shot once a month. I mean, is that something to be concerned about at all?
Well, if you're B12 deficient, you definitely need a B12 shot every month. And actually, the vaccines that we all get for flu and COVID and pneumonia are protective because they keep you from getting inflammatory diseases which can push along a dementia. So we all should be vaccinated in that way. But there are also vaccines that are being developed at Yale and elsewhere that are for the amyloid and the tau. So that's another kind of area of research that is going to be developed. The other thing I should mention, I didn't mention it before. In addition to vaccines, if you're losing your hearing, you should definitely get hearing aids, because you can lose your language if you allow hearing loss to go untreated. So vaccines and hearing and these other 10 healthy brain habits are all really important.
And let me also tell you, in addition to those medications that have been tested and approved, we're really using right now, most of our studies are focusing on neuroimaging, using an MRI to look deeply into the brain cells, and PET scans that look into the cellular level, and they can tell you a lot more about what's going on in the brain and then prescribe some treatment. So those are the main studies that are going on right now.
Right, and I see that places such as countries such as China and Spain, the nanotechnology is using GU971, which is a plant-based drug that alters gut microbiomes. It reverses Alzheimer's in mice by suppressing the information in the brain. Of course, you have the Bright Focus Foundation of Clarksburg, Maryland, and I mean, they're doing different treatments as well for Alzheimer patients that are at home and stuff like that. So it just seems like to me that there's a lot of so much research going on, and they really are digging into this. They're tackling into this. There's the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology in Japan is trying a synthetic peptide nasal spray that blocks tau. Human trials are next. What are your thoughts on all these things? I mean, do you think it's stuff that'll definitely, I mean, you're not doctors, obviously. I'm not a doctor, but do you think this is stuff that is all positive in trying to, reverse this disease?
And it does show that it's a worldwide problem, that around the world people are studying
and Yale is very much connected with a lot of these studies in a lot of these countries. The studies with lecanemab and donanemab were international studies, so they're hooked up with universities around the world.
And it's useful not to get stuck on just simply thinking, how can we treat the amyloid and the tau in the brain? To think about other areas of prevention. We need to attack this from a lot of ways, but it's so important that people are willing to be involved in research, because we're not going to make these breakthroughs unless people are willing to enroll in research trials, either drug trials or these imaging trials or just observational trials, where we see people once a year over time and see what the natural history of an untreated disease is.
Cognitive tests are given so they can monitor over time. And you did mention something about $50. When you're enrolled in our trials, you receive a cash card, and every time you come in for a visit, about $50 is loaded onto your card. The amount varies depending upon the type of visit. If you're just coming in for an MRI, if you're coming in for a 3-hour, series of activities. So you are given this cash card for every time you come in, and along with a study partner that we ask you to have a study partner, someone who knows you well, we bounce questions off of, and they also receive cash. And we have a contract with Lyft ride service, and so that we can offer transportation after your initial visit if you need it.
Right. And Vanessa, what currently right now, what is Yale's research department working on? What are they digging into right now at the moment?
They're really focusing on those neuroimaging studies. So people who are willing to have MRIs and PET scans on a regular basis, lumbar punctures, that we can get into, they can really determine on a deeper level what is happening. But there are observation studies, again, over the long term, where someone without any symptoms may have a family history, maybe not, just want to come in and just start having their brain monitored over the course of the years.
And is the federal government's reductions in research, including Alzheimer's disease, affecting Yale at all?
We had to rewrite our grants to scrub all of the diversity language out of those grants. So we did get the grant ultimately, but it was, before we were always kind of dinged if we didn't have enough of a diverse population being enrolled, and now we can't even mention that that's a goal of ours. So that kind of control, we can't use words like diversity or inclusion or those kind. Vanessa had to change her title because it had diversity in it.
Right.
So that's just a red flag with this federal government, but researchers will work around that. But
the current studies have not been affected.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you both could answer this as a question for both of you, but I would think doing all this research and stuff, it impacts you on an emotional level because you're doing all this research and studies and things like that. And I think, they say, for instance, if somebody's announcing a baseball game on the radio, they have to paint a picture for the audience. Well, I think, when you're researching all this, the picture is being painted for you in a way where you're like, oh, my God, these poor people, what they have suffered and what they've went through. Because to me, they don't really know once it's really deep in the disease, they don't really know why they're having the emotions they're having.
Right.
And I would think they're scared at times, which is very uneasy for anybody to have to watch their loved one or even their friends go through. So when you two are doing this, I'm sure it hits you on an emotional level.
It does, and it's one of the reasons why I do volunteer work for the Alzheimer's Association, because the Alzheimer's Association is really laser focused not only on funding research, but on providing the information and support for families as they cope with the disease. Because particularly in the later stages of the disease, it's the families who suffer as much or more than the patient as they see their loved ones slipping away.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline. ALZ.org/CT is the website where you can be directed to support groups or in-person or online education or resources in the community, because it's really, you have to have a holistic approach to this. I worked for 30 years at the Geriatric Assessment Center at Yale, where I worked with families, and that was actually both gratifying and harder, because I saw some people from diagnosis to death in the years that I worked there. But it's the families that are the real heroes in all of this.
Right. And Dianne, let me ask you, obviously you put some numbers and websites up here, which are very helpful, but is there any particular website that people could definitely go to kind of really look into this more and see exactly what
The Alzheimer's Association.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
And
information
Yale,
or the Yale if you're interested in
for
research.
clinical trials,
Yep.
Yeah.
ALZHEIME'S.YALE.edu.
Right.
Yes.
And so before we go, I'll ask both of you, and I'll start with you, Vanessa. What message would you send to the audience that's watching this? What would you ask them, and what would you encourage them to do after seeing this?
First of all, again, take care of yourself with healthy habits. But when you start seeing a decline, go to your doctor right away. And if they determine that you need to see a neurosurgeon or a neurologist, they will refer you. As soon as you can start getting treatment, the better. Because once it hits, it's almost impossible.
Yeah. And Dianne.
And I would say the same thing. I was thinking those healthy habits, that's the way of the future. If we can prevent the disease or even delay the onset by 5 years, you might die of something else before you die of dementia. But again, that takes discipline, but people really need to take control of their health. We need to have a wellness model rather than an illness model in our healthcare system, so that weight management and disease management are valued in the context of the whole person.
Yeah, and I think really you just have to, if you see anything that you think is a warning sign, it's okay to get it checked out, because
Yes.
the thing that I find ironic is Alzheimer's, dementia, in a lot of ways, they're similar to somebody who has a stroke or somebody who has heart problems, things like that, because your brain gets affected by all of those things. And a lot of the symptoms that you get from having a stroke, from heart attack, whatever it might be, are similar to this. So it's always a great idea just to get yourself checked. Even if you think it's nothing, it's better, as they say, to be safe than sorry.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, I thank you both for coming on today. I think what you're doing is a real service to the community and for Alzheimer's patients everywhere, and for anybody who has concerns and fears about this disease, you're giving them somewhere that they could go look and see,
Yes.
okay, it gives them all the data and information they need to try to see what they could do to, like you said, try to prevent this from coming on. So I really do applaud the work that both of you do, and I thank you for giving me some time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the bottom line is you have to protect your brain.
Yes.
And like Dianne said, include healthy tips. That's basically what it comes down to. And if you have loved ones who are having trouble or forgetfulness, get some help. Call somebody, call the numbers that were given,
Right.
in the credits, things like that. I think after listening to this and hearing both of you speak and the research that you do, I think we have to be hopeful that in the near future we'll be
Yes.
able to manage this, like I said, terrible disease. So
Yes.
thank you again. And
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really did enjoy this. And folks, again, this is a disease that has affected millions of people for decades. I mean, and it's something that these two women and their group of team members and things like that are doing everything they can to help not only find a cure, but to prevent this disease from getting to the point where, it's not manageable. So I really think, like I said, we should applaud their work and what they're doing. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.